Anyway, so I know the idea of a roof at Gobekli Tepe is kind of obvious to us, but it's not to everybody. There's a lot of people who think that it's one thing or the other, where there's either a roof and no astronomy whatsoever, or it was open air and then there was astronomy. So for some reason, people don't think of the alternatives, the hybrid approach, where there might have been a roof, but they're letting light through at certain places to make key. Well, it's like, this is how it looks now, right? There's a roof now.
Yeah.
And you see, they only chose this place because of where it is up high. It's the highest hill around. Gobekli Tepe means hill with a navel, and it's the highest hill around. So the reason they chose it was so they could look over the Harran plain. Like, this is from Harran, and you're looking, see these hills back there? That's where Gobekli Tepe is. It's the highest point around. So they're looking over this plain for more than one reason. This is the Harran plain here, and this is one of the most famous places in the Bible. This is the like town center for the moon god. And when they built Gobekli Tepe, it was partly because of the cereals that were there, partly because of wheat. You know, it's only 30 miles from Gobekli Tepe, where all einkorn wheat, this particular wheat type that is all over the world today. So the wheat that you eat that's in your cereal box was first from here. And so they're looking over the whole field for different reasons. There was the grasses that they were sort of tending to, but also where the herds were coming through, so they could see the entire area around for herds. But also, I mean, here's another view of it from, see those hills up there. Yeah. And this place, this temple here, is about Abraham. There's a pool of water here. That there may have been a continuous tradition of water rituals in pools right from there to here over, 10, 20, or 12,000 years. It's a long time. And just so people know where we are too, right? There's a group of sites is here. And that's, you can actually see the Harran plain on here too. Just a little one in there. So when they built the place, okay, let's pretend just for a minute that there was a roof, and just to get a good look at a couple of the things that they would see while they're building the place. They see all this stuff while they're building it. They must have had some interest, right? We know that they did align everything to the moon. Like, I can prove that. We've got that in the last video. But only so many people made it through the last video, because I think it's challenging to people. It's not easy, your normal YouTube watching stuff, right? You kind of have to know lunar standstills to get it. So this one we're trying to just show that they really did have astronomy going on here. And I have to be careful about saying which constellations they had, but just take a look at these guys. Do you recognize anything here in the sky?
Can't say that I'm familiar, but I'm sure experts would be.
Well, I've only ever pointed out a couple of them to you. This is okay, so here's the question. If you were to use the stars here, which ones would you use? And which ones are the brightest, right? In the end, it's about which ones are the brightest. This happens to be Orion here. You can see the belt of Orion here. You know Orion, right? And then this is the bull. This is the V shape of Taurus.
And just in case you can't hear her whispering, we are now arriving at the very south.
I don't have to pause it. Whatever. I'll cut it out later. But anyways, here's the V shape of Taurus. And this bright star here, this is Aldebaran, however you pronounce it. But it's the eye. Aldebaran, whatever. It's the eye of Taurus. That's how people refer to it. We'll see it again later.
Can you pause it?
Yep. This is what you need to see for later, because it's on some of the pillars. The V shape defines the bull on some of the pillars at Gobekli Tepe.
Oh, okay.
And that dot, that Aldebaran, or however you pronounce it, is the eye of the bull. Sometimes they call this the jaw of the bull, but it's really, Aldebaran is considered the eye to most people. But you can even see the Pleiades there. And it just the more you look at this place, the more obvious it is that they built it because of the view. And in fact, this is the guy who found it. This is Klaus Schmidt here, the head excavator. Before he died in 2014, but he had a vision for the place. He understood it wasn't just about the wheat. The wheat caused the Neolithic explosion. It was a certain type of mutation in the wheat that the grain held on for longer, so it didn't fall off when you touched it. It held on for longer. It made it bigger, so they could come along and take the wheat and bash it and get what they. Anyways, doesn't matter. But right here, you know what he's saying? He's saying it's a turning point in history. That's exactly the quote when he's talking right here. He's saying it's a turning point in history, and he doesn't just mean the wheat. He means the religion that went with it. And he actually stopped people from. There was a couple of farmers breaking the stones. A couple of the pillars, the heads. The guys were breaking the stones. They were in the way of their farming. And then Klaus recognized what it was, and he had the vision for the place. And he recognized that it's him that said it's a supernova, that this site is a supernova. And he didn't mean just the Neolithic explosion. There's also a religion that came with it. So one of the things to think about with a roof is if they aligned it so that only one hole was there, and maybe they only were interested in one star coming up or something like that, or maybe when they first built it, they did have, like, we can show how they aligned things to north and south all over Anatolia from this point forward, right down to the Hittites and all sorts of other places. But here, I'm still showing the view up here because they had these circles on every side of the hill. So if they were only able to see one view, the enclosure might have only been about that one view, and then they would have had enclosures all around the top of the hill. Okay, yeah, this is what I'm talking about for as far as other sides of the hill. So I've only ever really been showing you this, like this is enclosure D here. That's what most of the pictures you've seen so far are. But look what side of the hill it's on. You see these lines, they mean altitude. So you're going higher and higher up the hill here as you go. So this one is like, these are all on the top of the hill. But this one here that's pointing down the hill, you see the pillars are kind of pointed that way as well. Whether that means anything or not, we can find out in the future. But just to show you that every side of the hill had a different alignment. Like the pillars were done differently. See, like that looks. See how these ones are and these ones? They're nothing alike, right? They're nothing like each other. There's no reason to think that they're doing the same thing in each place. It might have really been about seeing every side of the hill, the horizon from every side of the hill. But this is what a lot of people think, and pictures like this are all over the internet, so people think that these are older than Gobekli Tepe. This is Natufian houses, and people thought that like maybe they stretched these hides over the entire enclosure at Gobekli Tepe, and that there wouldn't be a roof. So some people really believe this, and they believe it adamantly, like they're rabid on it, that there was a goddamn roof. You know what they base that on? One post hole. There's one post hole that the excavators found that may or may not have been about a roof. So all of it is based on that, and it's a ridiculous argument anyways, because I'll show you at Catalhoyuk and everywhere else they had windows. So you see the angle here. This is what I'm talking about with enclosure D, where most of the stuff you've seen, the best view is towards the southeast. I wouldn't know that, but it's southeast that way. If there was the winter solstice stuff, or the sun or the moon coming up on the summer solstice, it would all happen in that direction. And Pillar 43 is about that, and we'll show you all about that stuff. Oh, and this is what the actual guys who excavated Gobekli. This is pretty much Klaus Schmidt's words here. Where did the enclosures have roofs? And they don't even mention the one post hole here, but they don't exclude one or the other. Like they ask the question, did the enclosures have roofs, and is there any astronomy there? They ask them both in the same. If they're not excluding one or the other, like some people are online, they're trying to say that they're not sure either way. They've tried to look at it for the alignments for the moon and everything else. There's one paper that came out about one pillar on a minor lunar standstill. Nothing like what we've seen, what I've showed you. But part of the problem was they couldn't figure out what the center was to the enclosures and that kind of thing. So they got a small research team too. One of the things people don't understand about the people who are excavating is that it's a small research team, and they don't have the time like I do to go spend 20 pages a day for 10 years. They can't do that. They got grant money and supposed to do stuff with it. But see, here's another example where the hill sort of decides. This is around the winter solstice here, but it's in the evening. So the sun's setting there, and you might not expect this enclosure to be anything else about anything else but the winter solstice, for example. Something that to consider, and that maybe they only had one window. That's all you need here, and that still the whole year is the enclosure is only about that one thing. But also remember the stuff we talked about where this is also about death and rebirth. There may have been vultures in these enclosures eating dead bodies.
Oh.
Yeah. And people have to consider that as well in what they're doing, because if they had a roof, they didn't have access to these things because their stone closures didn't have a door on the inside. And also this kind of thing, a ring. Any of the if there was a roof, all you need is that. There's it's a window. They would call it a porthole. There's one English guy that's a porthole. But they had, there's no reason why they wouldn't have had this as a way to align. If the moon shone through that once a year, that's how they would know it was a major lunar standstill or whatever. Like this is the kind of thing they did in Mesoamerica. So this is like Machu Picchu stuff, Temple of the Sun in Machu Picchu. Just time of year, whether it's a solstice, it shines through. That's all I'm talking about. You could have it could be a solid wall. Who cares, right? It's a kind of a ridiculous argument whether it has a roof or not. But I want to go through it because, what I think doesn't matter. This is what I'm talking about. Where you also have to consider this. People who think that there's a roof for sure, you have to tell me why this stuff works so well. You have to tell me why there's 9s and 18s on these pillars that are aligned to things about 9s and 18s, right? You have to tell me why this is true, as well as the roof being there. Yeah. So Catalhoyuk. So you saw this one before. Do you remember this? Do you remember this enclosure?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
The
So
animals?
yeah. So we also have to remember the death and rebirth thing. This is a vulture. You start thinking about the vulture as an usher. And if these things were covered, they had to have a way of defleshing people, letting the vultures and animals at them somewhere, whether they had towers beside them. Like the posthole that I was talking about before, that could have been about a roof. It could have been about a tower of silence thing too, that you'll see in a second. But I just want to show you the attention to east here. See, remember this one where I showed you that they were focused on the east, and this is like an altar, and this is important because this is just like Catalhoyuk later on, where remember I told you also they dug these pillars up and broke them. These central pillars, these big central T-shaped pillars, they dug them up and they broke them after for some reason, and then buried it again. And look at this at Catalhoyuk 500 years later. These look like T-shaped pillars purposefully knocked over, like a symbolic way of knocking over T-shaped pillars and then embedding them into the walls. And all they needed was windows. You see, this is Catalhoyuk 7500 to 5500 BC, and all these little windows they made, that's all they needed, because the windows, look at this, see the shadow here?
Yeah.
So the windows be behind, and they, like in the western wall would have a window, and they would shine a light here, and it would be like, I've never been able to show this because there's not enough examples that are surviving, But you would expect that the light shining through the window behind would cast a shadow so you could tell what time of year it was here. Like these posts could mean solstice to solstice, and it would just the light shining through tells you what time of year it is. Something as simple as that, right? And all these designs, I mean, come on, we're talking about zigzags and everything, right? So in my language, I happen to know this is highly likely that when you have all these patterns together, this is about the ecliptic one way or another. And it is, and there's death involved here. It's death and rebirth are linked to the sun and moon with them. And this character, we got to get used to this character, but that's not important for a roof. Oh yeah, and here. So the guy who excavated Catalhoyuk noticed the focus on east as well. See how there's the eastern wall, and these pillars are all on the eastern wall. There's exceptions like anything else, but almost all of the pillars are on the eastern wall. These pillars really probably do represent the solstice points. And even the same patterns again, right? These diamonds and zigzags are everywhere at Catalhoyuk. Yeah, this is the one. I was waiting for this one. Okay, this is a good example because, see, there's the window here, and then it opens to a head. Like this is one of these. They think this is a birth goddess, where the goddess is giving birth to these bulls. And how many reasons can you think of for a window to be right behind the head? It was clearly about casting a shadow here for some reason or other, right? They're using the head to cast a shadow to see time, and unless this never existed, but this is an archaeological reconstruction. You know what I mean? This is really what it looked like. So they're shining a light through the window, and the head is casting a shadow on the wall, back and forth over the year. So that's why it doesn't matter if Gobekli Tepe had a roof. That logic doesn't make any sense. And here for the dating, is important. This particular spot in the wall is where they found the. Well, how long is this now? Oh, sorry, is that already? This is really important after all. I was going to skip it, but I'm not going to, because one of the things that people with this attitude about a roof where there's no astronomy if there's a roof, how you got to shake that, because they have to be able to say to me now, why can we prove that there was a timestamp? Like, we're taking the existing carbon data. This is the Gobekli Tepe team saying this is the range, and we're saying that we can, because of stuff like this at 9500 BC, when this eye was the major lunar standstill only then, and we saw the thing about the scorpion could only be 9500 BC, and the fox could only be 9500 BCE. We saw those things before. You'll see them again. And the carbon dating says right dead center of what we're talking about. We keep on saying 9520, 9550, and that's exactly where this peak is. Exactly.
Okay.
So that's their official radiocarbon dating. And only in 9500 BC do you get what we saw in the last video, but again, that last video was a challenge for people to get through. So, and the zigzagging eye. So I'm saying that the moon makes zigzag patterns. The eye was the major lunar standstill, and there's bulls drawn with zigzags coming out of the eyes. Like, it's pretty obvious stuff. So someone has to tell me how that's not astronomy, right? Maybe they only had one window, and it was for this, for all we know, in this particular enclosure, just so you could see the one time a year or whatever. And these tridents, like, I happen to have been in this stuff for so long that I can see these tridents in the bull, and I know that it's responsible for pushing everything back. And the sun and moon get this far, and then the bull rams it all back the other way, and then remember the fox kicks it back the other way. So it's like tennis on the horizon to these guys. And so at Catalhoyuk, which did have roofs, you have these kinds of patterns on bull heads. This is a skull of a bull, and it's got these tridents on it, right? But some also with the roof, the pillars had these cupules on it. See these holes on top of the pillars?
Yep.
So someone's got to tell me, if there was a roof, why does it look like there was water draining down here, right?
It does.
These things are kind of like a connection. The tops of the pillars could be something that held the roof in place, but it's more likely that they were just for water. Like the vultures need a drink after they eat you. Yeah, that kind of thing. It's just a way to connect the sky to the earth. The water, like a lot of the stuff is water rituals that will come out over time. But they did this in the ground. Like that's not for a roof. That's like for water, for whatever reason, right? And look how flimsy these things are. When they dug them out, like these pillars look like they could fall over at any time. So you put a roof on that, it's not stable. And this should freak people out. Where this is 9,000 BC or whatever, roughly. Do you see a person here? Do you see a person looking at pillars?
No.
What do you see here? You see the pillars, right? Everyone agrees these are pillars. These are like central pillars.
On the pillar itself.
Oh, those are just well. This is another 9. Look, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. In the middle is 9. Either that or there's an extra tick here somewhere. But this like cracks. It's hard. Believe me, I spent a lot of hours staring at this thing. But it's that whole thing again where it's 9 years between the lunar standstills. But we're just talking about a roof here. I don't have to get too far into that. What I'm trying to say here, do you see the person? This might be a person wearing a bird costume, to be honest, because they have wings they found as part of costumes at Catalhoyuk. It could have been part of their ritual, where they. Like I think this character is looking through the pillars to the moon or whatever on the other side. I think this is astronomy. But I don't see a roof, even if I'm wrong. Let's forget everything I said. But do you see a roof there?
No.
No. And this is eyewitness testimony. This is them telling us what they did. Now maybe it had a roof sometimes, and like it just hides, right? They just throw a hide on it when it's cold or whatever. Who cares? Look how flimsy they are, though. Like these central pillars. Imagine putting a roof on this thing. Look what they had to do to keep it in place. Just the excavation team, right? Look at all this lumber they used to keep it in place. You didn't put a roof on that. And even if they did, there's gaps. Like there's a roof on it now. We've talked about it a million times. And every place around had roofs. So I'm not saying they didn't have a roof. But again, you got to get used to the Vulture as an usher and their idea of the afterlife. Look at this. This is Catalhoyuk, and they had these towers where the vultures were consuming their dead.
Oh.
And we know that that's a lot of carrion birds and the vultures at Gobekli Tepe. It's almost certain that that's what they're doing there too. So where were they putting their dead? Like that was what the enclosures were probably for. And so they couldn't have a roof because the vultures couldn't get in there then. This is where I'm saying maybe the post hole, that one post hole that everyone talks about as the proof of a roof, may have been a post hole for something like this. I don't think so, because you'd think the enclosure should have been about that. Maybe you wouldn't put this beside an enclosure, or maybe they did. Well, who knows? Okay, so remember I showed you the V for Taurus. There's a reason why I showed it to you, because this is one of the central pillars. So you're looking. This is 5.5 meters, well, 5 meters above you. You're looking up at this, and it's got that V, the same as Taurus's head, right? So, like, people that want to talk about the roof also have to talk about these things and why there's an overwhelming amount of evidence for astronomy here. Yeah, so I'm saying that there probably was roofs in most of these, even if not at first, eventually, yes. Like, this probably fell from a roof. Like, who knows, maybe they burned the roof off or something when they buried it. Whatever they did, they buried the enclosure, but the first thing to happen was this fell in from somewhere. It looks like it fell from the roof. That was probably their entrance, just like at Catalhoyuk. They went in and out through the roof. But also, it is a hole as well, right? And even if they didn't have roofs at first, over time, if they did build a roof, it was like... let's see here. Okay, so Getting used to the Vulture as an usher. Remember this pillar where I was telling you that the gentle nudging thing here? So this is inside one of the enclosures. This is pillar 43, one of the most famous ones. Some people call it the Vulture stone. Get used to the idea of the Vulture as an usher. Even Klaus thought that the circle here had something to do maybe with souls and that kind of thing. But all I'm caring about is that this is a scene. Remember we went through this? This is the horizon.
Yep.
And this is inside one of the enclosures. So even if there was a roof, conversation was still about this scene that happens to the southeast, which we'll go over in the next video. I'm going to show every single etching what they meant, every single one in the next one. But for this one, okay, so now I can skip ahead. Anyways, all I'm saying is, look at the angle of the sun here. This is in the morning. These guys are good. This is Prehistory guys. It's another channel, part of the Gobekli community. But they're going to see it with the current excavator. And all I'm saying is there was enough of a gap. See the shadows? These guys are standing there and they're casting shadows, right? All they needed was this much of a gap, like a gazebo or a cabana or something. All they needed was that little bit to cast a shadow so they know the time of year. All they're trying to do is predict the time of year here. And it could be as little of a sliver as stuff like this. I'm skipping ahead a lot here. Like this, like see this kind of thing, just that little sliver? Even that might be enough. This doesn't mean anything to anybody, doesn't mean anything to me. I'm not saying it is. But just this kind of thing, when you're thinking about a roof, you can't think too much about. So anyways, let's finish this. So all I'm saying is all they needed was a little sliver of light, even if it was just this. If it was just a slit through a cabana kind of window or a gazebo, all they needed was a little sliver of light. What? Gazebo? Oh yeah, and remember what I was saying about which side of the hill is important? So here's the one we were talking about is down here, and then this, look at this, where the sun, this is more like the summer solstice, where maybe, yeah, the hill was in the way, so they couldn't even, the enclosure we've been talking about, yeah, I'm aware that the hill is in the way here of the sun on the horizon, but that's why there were other enclosures on the other side of the hilltop. Oh. You know what I mean? It's all over. And anyways, and this National Geographic reconstruction is pretty cool. But look how tall they are. Like, if you're going to put a roof on that, how are you going to make it stable? Even if they did just throw it up, you know, you have to sew together like 100 hides or whatever to cover it. Maybe they did do that, depending on the time of year. But anyway, so I want to get to the last thing here. But I want to talk about Lascaux as well. Like, oh, look at this picture. I want to buy this picture. It's a Shutterstock image. Look at that shot. Look at this picture.
That's a good.
Yeah, I'm going to buy this one, I think, for the. I mean, come on.
How much would it cost to buy that picture?
I don't know, probably $40 or something. But it's $40 for 2 seconds in a video, right? Okay, so I just want to get to the last picture. Boy, and this kind of thing, I happen to know that there's a reason why they put holes in here. They actually put these holes in here just for light to come through. But that's another video altogether. And here, yeah, Lascaux. Okay, so here, I just want to mention Lascaux here because have you seen this before? The caves of Lascaux. This is ice. This is way older. This is like 3,000 years before Gobekli Tepe. They painted cave walls in France, and they got. That's why I showed you the Orion and the V of Taurus earlier in the Pleiades, because they recorded this in cave walls. So that's the dumb. I'm saying it's a dumb question to ask about a roof at Gobekli Tepe, because I mean no one asks that about here. They've got astronomy in a cave, right? There's no windows here. You know, maybe somebody put dots on a hide or something and then brought it into the cave, whatever they had to do. But you know, it's just a ridiculous question. Of course they were looking at the sky. That's the whole point of going on the hill. But anyways, that's it for today.